Hello, everyone. I can always see Dahlia dancing like backstage before we've actually taken the
Dahlia, I hope you don't dance like that in real life.
everything that
you
brings
dance.
me.
You
You
don't
should
do
come
that.
to a rave with me. I dance like this. Yes.
I love it.
Own it.
I love it.
Own it.
What day is it? Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Cut the Shit, Cue the Genius. So excited to be here with you ladies. I feel like we're all July 4th weekend's coming up. At least here, we're all in summer mode. So I'm really excited for this topic today. I am Liz King Caruso, joined by my co-host, Michelle Bruno, and Dahlia Elgazar, also known as Ruckus Maker and Bruno. And we get to talk today to William Warren, who is with The Sketch Effect and just released a new book called The Conquering Creative. William, you and I did a podcast interview for the Texie Talk podcast, like at least a year and a half ago, probably. We had a really good conversation, but you have now released a book. So I thought maybe we could just kick off. First of all, congratulations, because that is a huge feat on its own. And maybe you can just introduce yourself a little bit and talk about, what's happened to you in the last year and a half and how this all came about.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks, Liz. I'm happy to be back. I enjoyed our conversation last time. I think that was either in the height of COVID or like in the midst of that when we last chatted, and we talked a lot about virtual events, which we can get more into that later and kind of what we do at the Sketch Effect with events and virtual events. But yeah, the latest, most exciting thing going on in my life right now is I did write a book. I published a book. It's called The Conquering Creative. It's been out now for about a month and a half, almost 2 months. And I'm really excited about it. It's not my core business. My core business has to do with events and sketching at events and animation. But this is kind of a new thing I'm working on. And The Conquering Creative is a business book for creative people. So anyone who does creative work, however you would define that. But, for me, I'm an artist at heart, but I've leveraged my art and turned it into a business. So The Conquering Creative is a book to help other people leverage their creative skills or their passions and turn it into a business. Because it's a difficult thing to take something you're passionate about, something you love doing, and then make it turn into something that makes money for you. It generates profit and sustains you. And so this is my humble attempt to condense 10 years of being a creative entrepreneur into 9 chapters, 9 key shifts, as I call it. And hopefully it's helpful. From what I've heard from people who have read it, it's been really helpful, not just for creative people, but for anyone who wants to run a business or be an entrepreneur.
I think a lot of people are looking for that kind of like handbook, and in the events industry, we're seeing so many people jumping into running their own businesses and kind of saying like, okay, they're going to make me go back and work in the office. Screw that. I'm going to go start my own thing. But how do you do that? I know a lot of people struggle with that. And I know I wish I had kind of like a 101 level type book. How have you seen that kind of work? Because in the events industry, I consider event people creative. So I think the way that you've done it, where you've taken your love for art and you've applied that to the events industry through graphic recording and visual video animations, taking that kind of like passion and then finding that little niche within a big industry and using that then to leverage a business and create a successful business. I feel like so many people in our industry could do that. What are some of those early keys that you would recommend people tune into to be able to be successful? Because there's a difference between like, I love to do this, or I'm pretty talented and I can do a business with this.
Right. So I actually addressed that question in the very first chapter, which is all about finding your professional sweet spot first finding your personal sweet spot and then finding your professional sweet spot. So what do I mean by that? The personal sweet spot, this is not a new concept, not a novel idea, but it's worth repeating, which is that in order to be successful in life, at least professionally, you have to plant yourself at the epicenter of 3 overlapping circles. The first one is, what are you naturally good at? So what are your talents and skills? What is the thing that other people say, wow, Liz, you're exceptional at blank, or wow, Michelle, you're really good at whatever. What's that thing that your friends throughout your life growing up, your family has told you you're excellent at? So that's circle number 1. Circle number 2 is, what are you passionate about? So what are the things that get you excited about? Now, passion is different from talent, because you can be passionate about something that you're not necessarily talented at or you're not necessarily very exceptionally good at. But what is the thing that lights you up, that gives you purpose in life, that gets you excited to get out of bed? So for people in the events industry, it's probably seeing people having a great time, or seeing clients succeed, or achieving their goals, or getting people together and seeing that the sparks light up. For me at the Sketch Effect, one thing that I'm passionate about is communicating ideas and helping people communicate, tell stories, and convey ideas in a way that's understandable and actionable and memorable. So that's circle number 2 is passion. And circle number 3 is, what does the market need? What are people actually spending real money on? What is their demand for? Because you might be really good at something and really passionate about it, but people might not want to buy it. So if you can plant yourself in the epicenter of those 3 circles, then success will inevitably come. And then concept number 2 in the first chapter is all about your professional sweet spot, which is also essentially product market fit. So how do you take what you're doing and turn it into a product? How do you find a way to deliver it? And then how do you find the right price point that people are willing to pay? And if you could do that, then you're going to find success. So for those in the events industry, what is the thing you do? What are you good at? How do you turn it into a sellable product? How do you package it? How do you sell it? How do you promote it? What is that right price point that people are going to be willing to buy it at? And then what are the channels to deliver it? So those are all the concepts that are introduced in the very first chapter, because if you can't get those 2 things right, then there's no point even going forward, because on your personal sweet spot or your professional sweet spot, then you're not going to have a viable career or business. And it's a process of trial and error to get there.
Yeah.
But you can do it.
I actually would like to just bend people's minds a bit, because what you're doing is you're giving them an assignment that I think they're having a holy shit moment right now. So maybe this is good timing, so they can take the long weekend for some and figure out what those 3 circles are. I would add one more thing, and I would love your insight on this, is how can someone redefine success in their mind right now, for them personally as well as professionally? And I know there's a lot of factors in there, where it's like, it could be money driven, it could be accolades, all of that. But like for you, for William, like, what is the core success definition?
That is an amazing question. And I think we don't ask ourselves that a lot. I would always take it back to purpose. So what is the purpose behind your work? Talk about success, I would also go back to priorities. What are the things that you say you prioritize in life? And oftentimes those are linked together. And so on the purpose front, it took me probably 5 or 6 years. There's actually a business mentor of mine who challenged me to list out, what is my personal purpose in business? Why am I even doing this? Because you can make all the money in the world, you can get all the accolades in the world, but if it's not anchored back to a purpose that's bigger than money or bigger than accolades, then you're going to burn out. You're not going to find success. You're going to wither away. And so I would encourage everyone to think about, what is the why behind what you're doing? What is that deeper thing that drives you to come back after a hard day, or bounce back after, a disruptive year like COVID? What is the why that gives you that energy and spark to come back and do it again and again and again? And literally list it out, write it out, publish it, print it out somewhere where you can keep it front and center. And then the other success metric I would point back to is priorities in life. We all say we value certain things. I value family, I value fitness, I value personal health, I value whatever. But if it's not actually reflected on your calendar, then it's not something you truly value. And so I would encourage everyone, again, another exercise to do over the long weekend, is to list out, what are all the things that you value? What are your priorities? And then line it up side by side with your calendar and say, does my calendar reflect that these things are priorities? Because most of the time, and I'm guilty of this, it doesn't. It's a mismatch. And our time is our only finite resource. Money can be earned back, resources can be earned back, time can never get back. Once it's spent, it's gone. So if our priorities are not reflected on our calendars and then protected, then are they truly priorities? So I love that question, and I would just take it back to purpose and priorities.
Fantastic. Thank you. I was thinking there would be another P in there just to satisfy Bruno's
He likes
like,
street.
passion
Oh, I
or
love
something.
alliteration.
I love it.
Alliteration.
I
Like
love it.
we need something like,
That's for the
purpose,
second part.
priorities, and passion, or like, I know, perpetual, I don't know something, but Bruno
I'll make a
has to-
version. I'll make a version too, and
you need to
that'll be
satisfy Bruno's alliteration
Ps.
thing,
All
please.
the
All
Ps.
right.
I have a couple of questions, so I need to get them in like maybe one big giant question. First of all, where'd you learn to sketch? Second, do you sort of subscribe to the Malcolm Gladwell, pick your passion and then do it for 10,000 hours to get good at it? And three, are you a little bit freaked out about AI taking away your job as a sketch
Oh man,
artist?
these
One,
are
two,
a
three. I'm
bunch
gonna
of
put 'em
great.
in, and then we can chew for the rest of
These
the
are a
20
bunch of
minutes.
great questions. I love it. We're digging right in. So how did I learn to sketch? I was always drawing as a kid. I mean, growing up, I was always doodling, sketching, drawing in class and church. Wherever I could have a pencil and a piece of paper to write on, I would be drawing. And I quickly realized, and my mom likes to tell the story of this project I did in first grade where I drew Captain Cook's ship. And she said, "Where did you trace that ship?" And I said, "I didn't trace it. I just drew it." And she was like, "Wow." So from that point on, I think I knew and the world knew that this was a talent I had. I don't have many talents, but that was one I knew I knew I had. And so I basically pursued it, went to school, did comics all growing up. Got an art minor and then went back to Savannah College of Art and Design and got a master's degree in illustration. So that's sort of that's the artistic journey. Question number 2 was
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours. I love Malcolm Gladwell. I think he's great. I've read most of his books. 10,000 hours is a lot of time to spend on something. I'm much more of a believer of like iterating and trying a lot of stuff. And then if it doesn't work, you iterate again. And then hopefully it just continues this cycle of getting better and better and better. And then, once you figure out what that thing is, then I think lean into mastery. But 10,000 hours is a lot of time, especially if we've got businesses to run, we've got families, we've got priorities. So I would encourage people to pursue mastery, but I also wouldn't get anchored on one thing too early because you could miss out on other things. I didn't know how to run a business. If I had spent 10,000 hours studying business before I launched my business, it would have never happened. But, I jumped in and I figured it out and I've learned it along the way and iterated, made mistakes, learned lessons, applied them, made more mistakes, learned new lessons, applied them. And then hopefully it's just this kind of upward cycle. But I do recommend reading Malcolm Gladwell books. He's awesome. AI. Okay, so AI is something that is fascinating to me and scary and interesting and all the above. I grew up watching the Matrix films, so my first thought is, okay, it's only a matter of time before I get plugged into the Matrix. But I don't want to be a Luddite or someone who is afraid of technology. I want to learn from it and leverage it as a tool. But I also do think there's inherent danger in something potentially taking away creative people's jobs. We talked about purpose earlier. One of my purposes in my business is I want to hire a lot of creative people. I want to create jobs for creative people. And so the thought of technology taking jobs away does worry me a little bit. But I'm hoping that we can land somewhere in the middle to where it becomes a tool that we leverage to do our work better, and that creates even more creative work because people are generally more hungry for creative stuff. So I'm hoping that it creates this positive. I hope it's positive in the end, but time will tell. Our team is keeping an eye on it. I'll tell you that.
I'm trying to help people understand that it is a muse, that it helps you brainstorm, it helps you be more efficient for sure. It gives you the ideas from an execution perspective that you probably woke up, got it in the shower or by driving or playing pickleball. I don't know if Bruno do you get your ideas from pickleball when you're like
God,
playing?
no, I'm just worried about getting it
All
over
right.
the net.
Just asking. That's your other P. Bruno, I gave that one to you.
That's the big one.
You go. There you go.
There it is.
Thank you.
The
But,
circle is complete.
We are done here.
but I understand, like, I think I think they need to get over their fear, because in my opinion, and I go through this all the time, is like, if I fear or doubt myself, my creativity is shot. I don't sketch, so I'm out of
Well,
luck. So
here's the thing about you, Dahlia, though. Your creativity is at such a high level to begin with. When you're shot, you're like, now you're down at like regular people's level.
She's
Like,
still
then
above
we
track.
can have a conversation, you know, without
Thank you.
bouncing off the walls. So
That was like
for you,
yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah, that was a friendly like shot of like, you need to stop with your fire hose of ideas. I get it, but it's all good. But can we talk about creativity though? Like any tactics that you can help our audience with when it comes to just how do you go through that ideation? I think people are stuck. How do you get unstuck from a creative perspective?
That's a great question. Creative burnout is something that we all face, whether we're traditional creatives or we do creative work in events or in business. Whatever it is, if we're creating, then we're going to face burnout. It's going to happen. And I think one key to resist that is to untether the notion that creativity comes from inspiration, that it comes from the muse. I think there are moments when the muse shows up and sprinkles magic on your head, and all of a sudden, boom, you're making these amazing things. That can happen. But if you're a professional, that's not the norm. That's the exception to the norm. So you have to untangle that notion that creativity results from divine inspiration or whatever. Creativity, I believe, results from process. It results from having a set of steps that you follow to be creative, to make something from nothing. And everyone needs to iron out their own creative process, whatever it is. What are the things that spark ideas? What are the things that allow you to go from nothing to something? And literally list it out. And it sounds kind of mechanical, like you're turning this like magical process into a set of like operational steps. It sounds a little mechanical, but if you don't have a process for it, then you will face burnout and you'll quit. Because if you are only relying on the muse, on inspiration, then that will only take you so far. So for me, there's a couple things I do that's part of my process. And everyone's process is different. One is I just walk away. I walk away for a few minutes. I literally will go take a walk. If I'm sitting at my computer or at my canvas or whatever, and I'm just stuck, I just walk away for 15 minutes. And there's tons of science that shows that your brain, like new channels open up when you start to see different things and your body's moving, your blood is pumping. So walk away. You mentioned pickleball. I'm a runner. I love running and just going out and kind of getting my blood flowing. I have epiphanies when that happens, or when I'm out exercising. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on the word. I had a nice word I was going to say. Doing adjacent creative activities is also a way to keep the creative juices flowing. So for me, I'm an artist. I sketch, I draw. So for me, if I step away and I paint, or I step away and I listen to music, or I step away and I work with my hands or build something, then to me, that those adjacent creative activities will funnel creative energy back to the main thing. And there's tons of other things I do, but what matters is that I've listed it out. I've created a process for it. And so when I hit that wall, I just follow the steps, and they might not all work all the time, but they will get me back on track and away from creative burnout, more so than just hoping and praying that the divine muse shows back up and sprinkles magic inspiration dust on me.
I love the way you're thinking about it, because it does make sense to have a process. I think like showers could be a part of it for me, podcasts, listening sometimes to a podcast or something, but it makes sense that you kind of get stuck. And then, so my next question for you is inspired by my own personal troubles with this particular issue. But so you get the creative process going, and a lot of times I do wait for that inspiration. Like it's any second now. And, I've gotten like, I'm working on a project with someone else. We've been talking about a business name for months and months and months and months. We know everything we want to do. Everything is laid out. We just cannot figure out. And I mean, we've tossed out thousands of names. So one of my questions is, for anything that you're working on from a creative standpoint, you've got to get the juices flowing. I feel like we've done that. And then how do you know when it's like the one? You're done. Stop. Just let it go. Is there an end point?
I feel like you're reading my mind, because this is actually a concept I talk about, and I think it's the 8th chapter, because creative people, we love the creative process. Like, you're working on your name. You want your name, you want the name of your new idea to be perfect. You know, as creative person, or even entrepreneurs, we want our product to be absolutely perfect. And, you know, growing up in school, you know, throughout life, oftentimes we have the freedom to just work and work and work on something until it's perfect, and we can drag it out. But in the professional world, we don't have that luxury. You know, there comes a time when you have to ship, you have to stop, and you have to ship. You know, you have to finish, you have to declare something is done and get it out into the world. And there's a concept called good enough to move on, or Getmo. And I'm stealing that from another podcast that I love, a leadership podcast by this leadership guy named Craig Groeschel. And he talks about the Getmo principle, good enough to move on, where you get to a certain point where any continual work on it, if you're working on something, you get to a point where any continuous work on it will damage the goal, and it will sabotage the work, because you're dragging out too long. And so creative people, or people in business, need to figure out, what is that line where it's good enough to move on, where you can just close it down. Maybe it's 85% of what you hope it to be. Maybe it's 90%. And it's a hard thing to do as a creative, to say, this could be better. I could spend more time on this. I could workshop this longer, but this is the marketplace. People are expecting something. They need their product. And you got to just say, it's good enough to move on, finish it, be done with it, send it out into the world. And so, yeah, it's a tough thing to do. But, you know, I think that an 85% job that's completed and on time is going to be better than a 100% job that's late or over budget, or, you know, something like that. So you got to figure out, what is that good enough to move on moment, draw the line in the sand, and then send it out into the world.
How do you feel about psychedelics?
How do I feel about psychedelics? I don't know.
Is that the other P?
Is that the other P?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I wasn't even thinking of that.
No, you were not even thinking about it. Sorry. This will be it. This will be the P's.
No, my question was going to be, what is your muse? And then for some reason, it took me to psychedelics. So I don't know.
We're getting deep here. I love it. What is my muse? Well, on the psychedelics front, I don't know. I don't have any experience with that. You know, I've got 3 kids, and they provide enough craziness in my life, with just the weird things they do and the weird things they say. So,
well, kids are like mushrooms. Just want to tell you.
That's good. I'm gonna tell them that.
They grow up and
they grow. They're in the dark. Yeah, all of that good stuff. I'm
gonna tell them that you're like a mushroom. Daddy, what does that mean? Don't worry about it. You'll learn when you're older. So what is my muse? That's a great question. I love traveling. I mean, that's kind of maybe a kind of a canned answer, but I love seeing the world. I love traveling. It's a priority for me and my family. And so I get inspiration from just seeing the world and learning about other cultures, and seeing other, like, architecture and landscapes and beautiful vistas that I've never seen and probably will never see again. That gives me a lot of inspiration. I mentioned exercise. I get inspiration when I'm out running, you know, in a park on a nice day, which is not too nice these days in Atlanta. It's like 1,000 degrees here. And then I also get inspiration from deadlines, you know, from time, you know, from just time being short. Like I mentioned priorities, like my family is a priority for me. I want to be home at 5 o'clock with them. I want to have dinner with them. I want to do a weekly date night with my wife. If I'm waiting for inspiration, if I'm waiting around for hours and hours and hours, then that's going to bleed into that. That's going to sabotage those other priorities in my life. So oftentimes I get inspiration from the fact that the clock is ticking down, and I've got to get this thing finished. That's, you know, with the book, writing this book, you know, I had a deadline to get it done. And had I given myself, I wrote it in 7 months. And had I given myself 12 months, I would have probably filled that time up. But having that deadline, that time on the calendar where it was like, I need to have it done by this time. That inspired me. That kicked my butt to get it done. So those are a couple quick answers to the inspiration question.
I'm sorry, Liz, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. I don't. Go ahead, Dahlia. I can tell you have something to say.
All right. Yeah. This is deep, right? So we're talking creativity. You're talking about your priorities. You're talking about your passion. And okay, so we have event planners, post-Corona coaster, that just went back and did a huge cut and paste in regards to a program that's 8 to 5, one breakout after the other, blah, 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 blah. And no creativity in the sense of, well, I will give them credit. They thought there was creativity in there. Maybe they got new speakers, etc. But the design of events are not keeping in mind the event participants' priorities when it comes to time, when it comes to muse launch pads kind of thing, when it comes to what will move the creativity for my attendees. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's twofold. It's like they're not getting out of their own way and adopting what you put in Sketch Effect, for example, to sketch something different, and then tapping into the priorities and what's in it for the attendees. Because if that was the case, we wouldn't be going to one session after another. We would be having playgrounds, not only puppy corners, sponsorship opportunity. I would have a kitty cafe, in my opinion, but that's different. But like, how do we shift that? Because it's a big ask, basically.
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's how do we have better events?
Actually, a question and event. So you can if you don't get it, I totally understand. But the thing about it is, how do you shift event planners and designers to respect the priorities and respect the process, basically from an attendee perspective? What can they do to shift that?
Well, I think we need to anchor it all in, why do people gather together in the first place? Why do we even have events? Why is there a whole industry around events? And I believe the answer to that is human connection. It's human, because we can get a TED Talk, we can get a keynote online, we can watch an amazing speaker on YouTube. We can get information from an email, from a PowerPoint, but people get together because they want to have that human connection. And that is even more important now after, the COVID season. And so I think event organizers needed to kind of anchor it in that purpose. Like, how do we foster more authentic human connections between people? And so maybe that is throwing out the keynote address. Maybe it is not doing the cookie cutter breakout sessions. Maybe it is something more creative, like maybe it's a pickleball, tournament or something, or maybe it's, I don't know, for us at the Sketch Effect, we foster that human connection by taking people's ideas that they share at an event and then illustrating it out, making it visual so people can see it, and they can revisit it, and they take pictures of it, and it sparks conversation, it sparks ideas. They're chatting it back to their team, they're posting on Instagram. So that's our small way of fostering that human connection. But yeah, I think if your event is not serving people and honoring people, like you mentioned, with their priorities, with their time, maybe they would have a better event if they had a 2-hour block in the middle of the day to get their work done, so they can come back to that afternoon session feeling like they're mentally present. Maybe it's not even having an afternoon session. Maybe it's just having a party, where maybe the CEO isn't up on stage doing the canned keynote, but they're having a little cocktail hour where they're all talking and they're chit-chatting and they're getting answers directly from leadership. Whatever it is, I think there's ways to serve people, connect it back to the human connection, do it in a creative way, and make sure people are getting out of it what they need to get out of it, which is those interpersonal connections.
Yeah, I like it. Karen says she gets inspiration when she sits in a quiet place with eyes closed and listen to my brain, then write it down. So like imagine if we're at an industry event or like at a conference, and after like a couple of breakout sessions, you do have these quiet pods or nap pods or like igloos of some kind where you can have Karen and peers just sitting down, closing their eyes and writing down inspired ideas from the sessions that they were at, either on their own or, and I'm not calling it a round table, and God forbid you would put 10 more people on a round table with fugly like cloths and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like just changing. Liz is laughing her ass off because she knows exactly what I mean. If anybody puts any type of tablecloths, it should either be like an Italian restaurant setting. I'd go for the red and white, like, you know, checkered thing, like turn it into Amalfi Coast within, you know, whatever. But I just think this is where William, I mean, I actually think like your sketch effect book do you have a workbook within your book?
Not yet. That's potentially idea number 2 is to make it more of a workbook.
Do it. We need it. We need it badly.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. I just think that, you know, when it comes to creativity, you either have those muses of their own, their creative muses within an event team, and some people look at them like they're batshit crazy. And then there's others where they're like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. What are you talking about turning a corner into an Amalfi Coast and like putting a setup and shit? And, you know, and then all of a sudden you lose sight of what, like you said, you're bringing people for a certain reason, right? Because honestly, some people still look at it as dollar signs. I'm only going to do stuff because I need to bring in the money. And I don't know. I mean, that means you're creatively designing for your own good or for the audience. I think that's the big question as well.
Right. I think there's a good balance of, especially in any business, but especially in events of, you know, the teams need both a wow person who says, wow, we should do this and this and this. And they also need how people like, okay, well, how are we going to do it? And I think the two can clash oftentimes because the wow person might introduce an amazing idea, like your Amalfi Coast breakout room, which I love, by the way, because I love traveling. I'm like, there could be travel themed rooms. Like I want to go to.
That's why I said it, because you love traveling.
I want to go to the Tokyo room and for dinner, and then I want to go to the Amalfi Coast room for lunch, and then, you know, the Mexico room for the party. You know, whatever it is. You know, pick your favorite countries. So you got to have wow people who just throw all these amazing ideas, you know, sprinkle the ideas out on the, you know, on the whiteboard, just ideas. And then also the how people to come along and then help with the execution. But the two need to make peace with each other because the how people can squash the wow people and the wow people can overwhelm the how people. And I think that it's got to be a delicate balance between the two. I'm a wow person. Thankfully, I have an amazing COO on my team, Meg, who's our how, and we have to know when we're slipping into our different kind of MOs and know that like, okay, we need to like find balance. We need to balance the force. And so in events, you know, I think you got to start with the wow and then lean into people who can help with the execution.
Karen just said it. Did Karen read your book? She said, wow and how. What the
amazing
heck?
I love it.
So Karen deserves a book from you. Well,
yeah, if I'll mail her a copy. Yeah. If I get her address.
Yep. There you go. Karen, we hooked you up.
William, I speak from experience in that I have observed that creatives sometimes put themselves into a box in two ways. One, my observation is they're creative, therefore they're bad at business. They're bad at actually making a living at it.
Yes.
Number two, like if I'm a sketch artist, I can't do anything else. I can't, you know, grow into other sort of creative pursuits, or else it will sort of sully my sketch artistry. So how do you, as a creative, and what is your advice to other creatives that want to make money and being creative? How do you avoid the trap of, I am this thing, identify with being this thing, I can only do this kind of thing, and branch out and actually, be more curious and take risks maybe to do other things. So if you're a painter, maybe you're also good at illustration or sketching or singing or whatever. There are a lot of ways to be creative. How do you not get boxed in?
I love it. Preach. Just keep going. I love it.
Mhm.
You're right. So for creative people, we're told our whole lives, hey, you're good at whatever. And then we
Yeah.
lean into that whatever, and we want to do that thing for our career. At the same time, we start to say, okay, well, I'm good at this artistic creative thing. I'm not good at finances. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at numbers. I'm not good at selling. I'm not good at all these things. And then we try to go into a career doing that artistic thing. And then all of a sudden we realize, oh, wait, if I want to have a career, I've got to do the numbers. I've got to sell. I've got to promote. I've got to do all these things. And that creates a real disconnect. And a lot of people's creative careers end there. They let that fear of doing the business side of things derail them. And that almost happened for me. I remember in my mid-20s, I almost stopped pursuing a creative career because I was simply afraid of doing all that businessy stuff. And the one lesson I've learned is that it's really not as hard as you think. If you approach life with a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, then the world will open up to you. So I'm sure your listeners, I'm sure everyone here listening knows or has heard of this concept of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. But the fixed mindset is what you described earlier. I'm a creative person. I sketch. That's my talent. That's what I can do. And that's all I'm going to do. Or I'm just not a math person. I just can't sell. I'm just not a people person. I'm an introvert. I don't want to talk to people. I'm just not that. I wasn't born that way. I wasn't given those talents. That's a fixed mindset. And I think that's the wrong mindset. I'm a big believer in having a growth mindset, which says, I don't know how to read a P&L right now, but I can learn. I don't know how to sell, but I can learn. I can get good enough to clear that bar. And the bar is lower than you think. To be successful in business, it's not rocket science. I didn't go to business school. I never even took a business class. But I'm running a big business. We've got almost 20 employees. And it's because I approach it with a growth mindset. I'm terrible at numbers. I'm terrible at math. I hate looking at spreadsheets. I hate it. But I've learned that I can learn enough about how to read a spreadsheet to clear that bar. And so my advice to creative people is just to challenge your mindset. Do you have a fixed mindset or do you have a growth mindset? And then surround yourself with people that also have a growth mindset. That's a huge thing, is to be in community. I'm a massive believer in being in community, being in a group, having a coach, having a mentor who can challenge you when you're slipping into a fixed mindset, challenge you to get back into that growth mindset. And then I'm not saying that you have to become an expert accountant or an expert salesperson, but you can get good enough to get by. And then as your business grows, then you can delegate, you can outsource, and bring people into your team who are good at those things. But it's all about that growth mindset. If you approach life and business with a fixed mindset, then you're gonna only get so far.
Yeah.
Great.
And to your earlier point about the how and the why. Wow. My God, I keep saying why. Wow and how. Partnerships, right? Like you find the right people and you have to respect that there is a balance to that wow and the how, or there's a balance to the ideas and the operations of it all. And there has to be that respect. And it made me think that, similar to how you were talking earlier about the creative process, I think within the business world, there should be kind of a process that you follow. Like in order to enable the wow person to really thrive and do what they do,
Right.
this is the process we follow. And then when it gets to this point, the how person takes over and they do what they need to do to really be able to thrive and take those ideas and pick the ones that are going to be best executable. Like there has to be, you can always work with other people to
Right.
fill in where it doesn't, naturally come to you, even if you're trying to grow. You know,
Right.
I've tried to learn things many times and looked at it and been like, nope, just not.
Yep. Yep. I'm gonna get someone else to do it.
How many brain
that's-
cells do I want to kill doing this?
Yeah,
That's what I
exactly.
always say.
Right.
But it's always good to try and to learn and I think not labeling, you know, just like trying not to label yourself, trying not to label
Yeah.
others as bad at math or good at this and great at this, and creative people then can't, you know, we kind of live up to the labels that we give ourselves. So
That's right.
if we refuse to give ourselves labels, then there are all kinds of possibilities.
And that's another, you bring up another tension that a lot of creatives struggle with. Similar to the fixed mindset struggle, a lot of creatives struggle with this notion that they have to do it all themselves, because they have, from a young age, doing their thing, they've done it on their own. You know, they've gone to their studio, they've gone into their workshop, they've gone in front of their computer, and they've produced from A to Z. They've done the whole thing themselves. And that's a massive mindset shift for creative people, or really anyone who wants to run a business, is that you cannot do it yourself. You've got to get a team around you, whether it's just a part-time person to help you with taxes, or it's a team of 50 people that you employ. You got to have people around you, because if you lean on your own strengths too much, then you're gonna fall into the gaps. You're gonna need people to help pull you out and fill in your gaps, while you are growing. You have that growth mindset, but you're also keenly aware of where your real gaps are, and work with a team to help resolve those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much, William. I feel like we got to cover so many different things, and it looks like for some reason our stream is not live on LinkedIn, so we'll have to share all of these nuggets, because this was such a great conversation. So we thank you for joining us, and we will be back next Thursday. Topic, I think, still to be confirmed by
unless someone has one.
Someone has a
Karen,
great idea.
Karen, you always have great ideas. So if you want to pipe in or be on the show, it's you.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll just have you back, William. We'll just
every week. It'll be a standing
just
weekly.
Keep coming back. We'll have 4 of us now. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all of those who are watching and listening. Thank you, Karen. We love seeing your face here many times. Have a great holiday weekend if you're in the U.S. And we'll see you all next week on Thursday.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.